We're going to give everybody just a chance to settle in before we begin. Great. All right. So good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in again to Velodyne Lidar's digital learning series, Automation and Safety During COVID-19. I'm Pamela Gauchi, your host for the next 30 minutes. And joining me, of course, is my co-host, Mary, who is running some slides in the background. Today, we're excited to have Vikrant Aggarwal, president of Local Motors, as our featured guest. But before we begin, let's take a quick look at our agenda so you know what you can expect today. It's pretty simple. I'll start us off with a brief overview on Velodyne, highlighting one of our sensors, the Ultra Puck. After my overview, I'll introduce Vikrant and we'll dive right into our interview for about 20 minutes. I will save the last few minutes for audience Q&A, so use that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to ask questions anytime during the episode. As always, we are recording today's episode, which will be available to watch on Velodyne Lidar's YouTube channel. So let's begin. As you can see on this slide, Velodyne's LiDAR sensors are used in a myriad of applications within a variety of rapidly growing industries. And this is because our broad portfolio of LiDAR solutions can cover all of the specific types of needs for each industry. And those needs include performance, versatility, and form factor. Now, today we'll be speaking with Local Motors specifically about mobility and autonomous vehicles. So let's take a little bit of a closer look at Velodyne's Ultra Puck sensor, which was developed with automotive applications in mind. The Ultra's 200-meter range and 32 channels provide enhanced resolution to identify objects easily. Velodyne's Ultra Puck generates 1.2 million points per second in dual return mode. And since it's built on Velodyne's 558 patent, it provides a full 360-degree environmental view to deliver accurate real-time 3D data. Now, let's see what that kind of data looks like. In this video clip, you can see the high-density, long-range data captured by Velodyne's Ultra Puck on a drive through Nashville, Tennessee. In addition to the features I've already mentioned, the Ultra offers fire and exclusion and interference mitigation features. It also includes advanced features for minimizing false positives, as well as best-in-class power efficiency and temperature range. Add to that pricing and an encapsulated package for handling harsh environmental conditions and weather. And here you really get a sense for just how detailed of a point cloud the Ultra can produce. And here you can see how the Ultra is actually integrated into Local Motors' 3D printed electric autonomous shuttle, also known as Olly. This particular Olly is owned by Velodyne. We've often taken it with us to show it off at events, including our own annual World Safety Summit, where this photo was taken. Now, Vikrant will tell us more about Olly in our interview. So now I'd like to introduce Vikrant Aggarwal, president of Local Motors. Welcome, Vikrant.
Good morning, Pamela. Good morning, Mary. Thank you for the opportunity. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody who's on this webinar. I want to thank you, Pamela and Mary, for giving me the opportunity to join this webinar, and also, for the great partnership we have with Velodyne. So I'm excited and looking forward to this session over the next 20 minutes or so.
Awesome, and thank you for spending your morning with us. So I'll dive right in. To start off, can you tell us a little bit about Local Motors?
Yeah, so Local Motors is an mobility for service solution provider through our shuttle for the first few miles, last few miles, slow speed shuttles. We were founded in the late 2000s. And over the last 12 years or so, our focus has been to focus on a different manufacturing process, which we can talk about a little bit more, but also, various elements of mobility. And about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we focused on Olly, which is our, like I said, slow speed people mover, and looking forward to discussing more about that.
Great. And so Local Motors has publicly stated they have two goals. So the first, to revolutionize the transportation industry, but also to revolutionize the automobile manufacturing industry. So this is a twofold question. First, why those goals? And then why do you believe the current models are not sustainable or need to change?
So let me just take the first on the transportation industry. As we all know, the world we are living in, how and when and where we go is evolving, right? Even with the recent changes with COVID, many of us are learning what it's like to work and even have the webinars like we are having, right? So mobility as a service is becoming more and more a need rather than a luxury, right? My view is over the next 5 to 10 years, there is going to be a shift, continued shift on mobility, both from the powertrain that goes into mobility solutions, but also how the mobility solutions interact with each other. So multimodal mobility as a service is going to play a role. So, and third is there's a generational shift. I have 2 kids, and my view is, especially my younger one who's 11 is probably never going to own a car, right? Even though he denies it at this point. So there's a big shift happening, which is driven by changes in preference, driven by people moving into more and more densely populated areas. So traffic and parking is an issue. And third is the ease and convenience. So that's a big shift that we are seeing. And finally, there's a big shift from an environmental perspective, right? And on the second one is, which leads into the manufacturing process perspective, our 3D printed shuttle uses, which is 80% 3D printed, uses 40% less power to produce. The amount of capital investment and the space required is significantly lower, thus allowing us to scale that manufacturing process in different parts of the world rather quickly. And, as we all know, during COVID, as an example, the supply chains across the globe have been stretched and strained. And with our model, with less number of parts, less power consumption, and more localization, it gives us the ability to produce our shuttles quicker. And finally, 3D printing allows us to make changes to the design of the shuttle much more quicker and cheaper than traditional manufacturing processes.
Right. Yes. So Ollie really is the embodiment of all of those things. And of course, you have a pretty unique manufacturing process for Ollie. So I want to talk about that in a little bit more detail. But first, can you tell us a little bit about Ollie, where it's deployed, and a little bit about it?
So Ollie is, like I said, a slow speed shuttle, which can carry between 8 to 12 people. It runs less than 25 miles an hour. It's a fully electric, autonomous vehicle. As regulation allows us, we will get to level 5, which of course is a few years out. And like I said, it's a slow speed shuttle. So the solution will not run on highways and interstates. However, it will, and it is becoming part of the broader mobility ecosystem to help cover first few miles, last few miles, which makes it easier for people to combine multi-modes to get from point A to point B.
Great. So, and before we dig a little deeper into that manufacturing process, Vikrant has graciously provided us with a great video giving us a firsthand look at one of Local Motors' microfactories where Ollie is produced. So I think this is a good time to show that video. Awesome. So, Vikrant, can you tell us a little bit about what we just watched and maybe touch on a few of the important ways your manufacturing process, as you've just shown us, is different than standard automobile manufacturing and some of the challenges of 3D printing at that scale?
Sure. So a couple of things, Pamela, if I get started. I know it is a quick video, but I hope folks watching the webinar got a sense for the scale or the small scale of the facility. So, when we zoomed in from on top, it showed you how big the total factory is. That factory can produce about 250 Ollies a shift, okay? At full scale production. The second is, I hope people got a good glimpse of the 3D printer. So that 3D printer actually prints the structure of the whole shuttle. We print it in two pieces, the top and the bottom, and then we bond it together. The third is, we have hub motors. I hope people saw those little silver things being installed. Those are hub motors that make it very efficient and very quiet, all right? And fourth is, people hopefully saw the interiors of the shuttle. It is quite different. It's a lot more comfortable. It can be a lot more interactive along with technology that's enabled. And then the fifth is, I would say, is, just my view, I'm sure I'm biased, it's a pleasant view. It is, from the outside and inside, it looks a nice vehicle a nice solution to ride in. And then the last is, hopefully people got some snapshots of the mother and the son and, other folks riding the shuttle. So this is not a concept, it's a reality. It's happening. It's happened. We have deployed the shuttle. We've run it in various parts of the world. And so those are the key things, highlights of the Ollie. The other, in terms of the challenges, Pamela, as you can, and as the audience can imagine, one challenge is, the 3D printing process, convincing people that a 3D printing process structure has similar strengths to traditional structures that we see in vehicles. Okay, I'm not saying they're the same, but similar. The second is, as we all can imagine, even though 3D printing has existed for many, many years, there's evolution going on, right? In terms of materials that can be used, how do you control the processes to make sure you have a repeatable process, and so on and so forth. So I believe those are the few challenges. I actually think they're opportunities, Pamela, rather than challenges. But that's kind of my view of Ollie and the manufacturing process.
And so that was in Knoxville, correct?
Yes.
Great. And I have to ask, how big is that printer?
It's about 2 room sizes. So it's, if I know it's not, we flipped through it pretty quickly in the video. It's about 2 room sizes.
Great.
I don't have the exact dimensions top of my head, but it's about 2 room sizes.
And so Logo Motors was founded with a belief in open collaboration and co-creation. How did that approach spur innovation and bringing Ollie to market? So,
my view is the current ecosystem is going to be partnerships, and different players such as, Velodyne as an example, bring their expertise into the system, right? So no one manufacturer is bringing most of the expertise to the ecosystem, right? It is a combination of the LiDARs, the 3D printing, the wheels that we use, the battery packs, the software, autonomous software, right? So having an open platform allows companies such as ourselves to bring, to collaborate with the best out there, right? And provide the end users and the operators the best solution, right? So that's how I believe and that's allowed innovation, because different companies come with different perspectives, right? And while sometimes that may seem like a tedious process, right, it actually brings out the best from a solution perspective for the marketplace.
Great. And now, interestingly enough, you did your first Ollie deployment in Italy, I believe in January, as a 4-month trial. Now, that was right before the pandemic hit in full force, and Italy became the epicenter for some time. So can you tell us a little bit about that deployment?
Yeah, so that was our first deployment in Europe. Prior to that, Pamela, as you know, we've had deployments in the US and Australia and other parts of the world. And that was our first deployment at an International Labour Organization campus in Turin, Italy. I actually was fortunate enough to be there the day we launched it. And it is being very, very well received. Now, sometime in February, March, as you know, COVID struck, and all our operations were paused for a period of time. We have just agreed to extend that deployment for a few more months because people are quite impressed, but more so from a utility perspective, it's given people a whole bunch of utility to go from point A to point B. So we are in the process of restarting deployments as we come out of COVID.
And that was the result of the Ollie Fleet Challenge, I believe, right?
Yes. So about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, we as a company, in our desire to gauge end user interest or operator interest, ran fleet challenges where we would actually go to cities and basically had a fleet challenge wherein people gave us a use case for where we could deploy our shuttle and why. And, we did the same thing in Europe. We ran actually one for Amsterdam, we ran one in Italy, and we ran a few others. And then based on some criteria, we selected Turin, the ILO campus, and it's been a success.
And so now with the COVID-19, can you tell us how has that impacted locomotives, and how do you think it's impacted the mobility market overall?
So in terms of the COVID impact, right, it's impacted everybody, right? All of our lives. It has put, significant stress on the global ecosystem, right? And we are no different from that. Having said that, my view is we are starting to see, so it has shifted things to the right, Pamela, okay? I don't know, is it 6 to 9 months or 9 to 12 months? It's hard for me to predict that, but definitely it has affected it adversely. On the flip side, though, I believe that COVID-19 is going to and has started to accelerate the move towards mobility, shared mobility as a service. Okay, we are seeing that we have actually come out with a concept which I cannot share too much detail as yet, where we are calling it a clean Ollie, where we are installing the appropriate level of cleaning processes and systems in the shuttle so that people can ride it and feel as safe as they can. The other is, I think, from a mobility as a service, and given the pressure on jobs by local governments, it will enhance, and it is already enhancing our capability to go to those markets and offer solutions with a manufacturing process that can be localized. So, there is a view in the marketplace that COVID will hurt mobility, shared mobility as a service. My view is, if anything, COVID will accelerate it, because at the end of the day, people still need to get from point A to point B, right? And still have to go to work and still have to travel. And if you look at, I think the opportunity is twofold. One is, if you look at the number of transit buses running empty, I would say the number is over 95%, right? There's a handful of people in a transit bus market typically. Now, there are parts of the world where there aren't enough diesel buses out there, right? The second is, I think people are now starting to recognize the value of mobility as a service in a much greater way, right? Whether it's due to COVID or due to strikes and so on and so forth.
So we have time for just a couple more questions. So I do have to ask one or two questions about LiDAR specifically. Is that an essential technology for your autonomous vehicles, and why?
Absolutely. I mean, you showed the video of Nashville, right? Even though there are varying statistics around the number of accidents that happen due to driver error, right? In my mind, a lidar is the eyes of the driver, right? It allows us to visually see and perceive what's out there on the road or on the pathway and how to navigate around that. So absolutely, it's an integral part of the mobility ecosystem, especially when it comes to autonomous side.
And what are some of the key specs and features you're looking at when you're looking at LiDAR?
I mean, quicker recognition, deeper recognition, Pamela. Quicker, deeper, and much more distant, right? Because the more time the system gets to adjust, and then finally, interacting with vehicles on the road, right? Other vehicles, and then interacting with traffic lights, right? Those are the kinds of key things that we are looking at.
So one final question before we go to audience Q&A. We have quite a few questions from our audience. I want to say congratulations, because I know just a few months ago, Locomotors began production on Ollie 2.0, the second generation. So twofold question. Can you tell us about some of the new features in Ollie 2.0? And then, Ollie 3.0, what might that look like down the road?
So I can especially talk about Ollie 2.0. I would prefer not to share too much detail on 3.0. Right, except that 3.0, right, is going to have more features. It could go faster speeds, right? Our goal definitely is not to run 50 miles an hour. Our goal is to enhance the speed, okay? And maybe make it a little bit bigger. The 2.0 versus the 1.0, if I just use those, a couple of key highlights. One is the quietness and the softness of the ride on the 2.0 versus the 1.0. 1.0 was good. I believe 2.0 is exceptional, right? If people get the opportunity to ride a 2.0, I would encourage you to ride it. So the second is, continued enhancement of the feature sets that we have in the shuttle. For instance, we have what we call a Tower of Wisdom in our Ollie 2.0, right? Which gives you a much better visibility of the route, as an example. Gives you gives our operators the ability to display ads in the shuttle, right? And the third feature is, as I said, quieter and softer ride, is just the comfort, right? Because our view is experience. And then the last one is accessibility for all. So our Ollie 2.0 is going to have a fully certified ADA ramp, because our objective is, that it is a software, it's a mobility solution that's for all, right?
All right, so I'm going to get to some audience questions. We don't have too much time left, but the first one, so the video indicated that it takes about 9 hours to print for the printing aspects of Ollie. How long does it take to install the drivetrain and other components to have a fully complete Ollie?
So our goal is to get to about 250 to 300 hours to complete a shuttle.
Okay. And another, can passengers interact with Ollie in any way?
The passengers can interact. Our goal is, over time, as the technology evolves, the passengers will be able to interact through technologies on the shuttle. I'm not sure I totally understand interaction with the Ollie itself, because from a safety perspective, we actually would not want passengers interacting with the shuttle. But there are technologies like 5G and all that stuff that we will be installing. Those are features, as we see greater demand for it, that people will be able to use on the shuttle.
Great. And so I have some questions here about charging on the Ollie. How long does it take for the Ollie to charge? How long does that last?
So we, so let me just answer this a little bit broadly. As people know, there is significant advancements in the battery technology, right? Our goal is, by end of this year, we will be able to charge the battery within 3 to 4 hours, and that will give us the ability to run the Ollie with anywhere between 8 to 12 hours, depending on the environment.
Great. So I have a question here. Can you please comment on the business model when the Ollie is deployed? Do you license it the manufacturing process design, or do you supply the Ollie and maintain for the application?
So we supply the Ollie, okay? However, our path to market is through operators, the public transport operators, hospitals, university campuses. So we are not, and this is evolving. Our current view is we are not in the business of operating and maintaining Ollies. We are going to be in the business of providing a world-class solution that we will partner with key operators out there in the marketplace, whether they're PTOs like public transit operators or industrial businesses or hospitals or universities who will maintain and run the Ollies. Now, that doesn't mean you throw it over the wall. We will, make sure we are working closely with them, but that's the business model we are pursuing.
So, and I'll ask one final question, because this is kind of a big one. What do you think is currently the biggest challenge for the mobility industry today?
I think there are three, I'm delighted with that question because I get that asked many ways. I think there are three key things that need to happen for us to accelerate mobility in our world and autonomous mobility, right? One is regulation, second is mindset, and third is technology or capability. Okay, I believe technology will continue to evolve, but technology is already there. I believe mindset, once people ride an autonomous shuttle, and we have many deployed, the mindset is easier to come across. The biggest challenge in my mind is getting regulation to move quicker. I'm not going to be critical of regulators because I think they're doing their jobs, but I think that is going to be while it's moving, how do we accelerate the move is going to be the biggest challenge, or is the biggest challenge, not going to be, it is the biggest challenge in my mind.
Great. So we are unfortunately out of time, but thank you so much, Vikrant. And if we didn't get to your question today, no problem, because you have our contact information right there on your screen. So you can reach out to us directly with any questions about local motors and Ollie, or Velodyne Lidar and our Lidar sensors. Now again, this webinar recording will be available to view on Velodyne's YouTube channel. I do want to thank Vikrant Aggarwal for joining us today. Thank you so much, Vikrant.
Pamela and Mary, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Awesome. And I do want to thank our audience also. And if you're interested in learning more about automation and safety during COVID-19, join us for our next episode on Friday, July 10th, when we'll be speaking with Arjun Narang, co-founder and CTO at Gatik.